Chuka, the Prime Minister has said it is only this deal or it's going to be no deal. But not many people are signed up to this Chequers deal. She can't even get her whole party behind it. Is it now just this deal or no deal?
No, that's a fiction. In the end, Parliament will decide what happens, and Parliament could, for example, provide that we have a people's vote on the final deal if we want. But
who on earth would vote in Parliament for a people's vote? Well, I know you want it.
Yes, so how the arithmetic would add up, you would need the Labour Party front bench to sign up to a people's vote. And
They've already said they'd rather have a general election. They want to see this all collapse.
Of course, and if I was still in the shadow cabinet, I would be saying exactly the same thing, but they haven't ruled it out as an option, because in order for us to have a general election, you need 2/3 of the House of Commons to vote for it. And, you know, I think Iain's feeling a little bit, you know, not quite as stable in his seat. His majority's come down massively. There are other Brexiters, for example, who are in the same position. But I tell you one thing, I can hear him chuckling in the background, but I tell you one thing that I think Iain will agree with me on is that this Chequers deal doesn't please anyone. It doesn't please me because, frankly, I would rather have us being part of the economic structures of the European Union. I'd like us to be part of the single market and the customs union, of course. I'm always been honest on this programme. Yep. I'd rather we weren't leaving the European Union at all. And for Iain and his group, the ERG, which basically has Theresa May hostage, this isn't good enough for them because it's not enough of what they call a clean break. So for once, on Brexit, I think Iain and I arrive at the same place on this Chequers deal, but for different reasons.
OK, Iain, apparently you're about to be unseated as a Member of Parliament, and that's what's driving you.
No, not in the slightest bit, actually. Can I just get back to the point, really, of the question that was posed earlier on, which is, I agree with Chuka in this regard that the Chequers proposal doesn't fly, for two very fundamental reasons. The first is you can only ever arrive at a deal if the other side is willing to sign up to the basic parameters of that deal, and the EU has made it pretty clear, despite any warm words they come up with on Thursday, this is a no-go area for them, because if you look at it from their standpoint, this opens up the door to a half entry into what is essentially the customs union single market without any of their prescribed obligations, which acts as an incentive for others in the EU to think about doing something different. And they're not prepared to do that. And France will never sign up to financial services being outside, if the others are in, the customs union outside those regulations. So the key thing is there an alternative other than what the Prime Minister says, which is to WTO? And I do fundamentally believe there is. In fact, the signals have never been stronger from the Commission. Both Barnier and Juncker in the last 2.5 weeks have sent almost megaphone signals to the government, which is, we want to do a very special free trade deal with you, they said, and we're also prepared to look at what is the problem on this, which is to do the Irish backstop. And the proposals put forward last week show and demonstrate in practical terms it is wholly feasible not to have a hard border in Northern Ireland. So
right, let me ask Chuka this. Yeah, OK, Chuka, let's go to this idea of the people's vote, which you're so exercised about, right? What would the question be?
Well, I think that there are two options. You could either have a choice between no deal, leaving with the Prime Minister's deal, or remaining and changing our country. That's one way you could do it.
Right, but in other words, you split the leave vote to guarantee Remain.
No. If you let me finish the other half of the sentence. No, the other way of doing it, because it depends on the Electoral Commission. In the end, they get to determine the question. Is that if we end up leaving with no deal, could be between no deal and remaining and changing our country on the current terms, or it could be between the Prime Minister's deal and remaining current terms. Personally, I have no particular problem. Can I just say two things about what Iain has just said? There's a problem with what he has suggested, you know, the hard Brexit, leaving on World Trade Organisation terms. I just don't think there is a majority in Parliament for that. And the interesting thing, actually...
No, hang on, sorry, but Iain Duncan-Smith has just said that the EU is sending out a signal. We heard it from Nigel Farage yesterday. Yeah. Apparently, there is a massive free trade deal on the table, just within our grasp, that the Prime Minister's not grabbing, that's going to solve all of this. We don't have to sign up to the four freedoms. We can take back control of our borders and not have immigration on the same scale, and we get all the benefits of free trade, and we keep the Northern Ireland problem solved.
Except that we don't, because...
Well, someone's lying, then.
Well, put it this way, I wouldn't necessarily accuse loads of people of lying. People have different interpretations on this. 80% of the UK economy is made up of services. If you have a free trade deal, generally it only covers the 20% that is goods. So you'd end up with this big deal that covers a small part of our economy. But one thing I was going to say, because Iain was talking about other countries and their views on this, one of the really interesting things of what's going on around Europe is how other populations are now viewing their relationship with the European Union, seeing Brexit. So take Denmark, for example. Strong strain of Euroscepticism. Lots of people like Iain and their politics saying, get out of the European Union. Yeah. And actually, when they've looked at Brexit and the utter mess that we're in, and look, whether your view is voted leave or remain, nobody voted for this chaos a mess. Nobody voted to be poorer. Nobody voted for...
It hasn't actually happened yet.
No, exactly. Right? And look,
it hasn't happened yet. And my argument about the people's vote, if the people's vote was to vote on whether there should be no deal or the Chequers plan, I get it, because both are forms of Brexit. What I cannot, as a Remain voter myself, accept democratically is an option to just ignore the result of the referendum and stay in the European Union. And any second vote which allowed that as an option, to me, is anti-democracy.
But
even though I would like it,
yeah,
I think it's anti-democracy.
I disagree.
And you, as a democratically elected member of Parliament, need to convince me...
Let me tell you
why the option shouldn't be no deal or Chequers plan.
Chuka.
I'm not sure I'll be able to convince you, but let me say this. I get your point, but I disagree with it, because ultimately, if the people are the ones voting on this, it's not like Iain and I are sitting in the ballot booth saying, if you don't do this, we're going to come after you. In the end, the British people will get to determine what happens at this. You would be thwarting the will of the people if Parliament just come and imposed a solution on this that nobody really voted
Iain
for.
Duncan Smith.
And the point is, we didn't get a say on how we leave the European Union.
No, because we were just asked to vote and then the government would implement.
Yeah, but when you have a general election, general election, you don't get a say in how the government then does everything.
But you
just vote for them.
But you have a general election.
Where's this idea come from that the only way you can possibly vote for anything is if you know every tiny little detail?
And where did this idea come from? Well, where did the idea come from that democracy stands still and we never have a
Can we let Iain Duncan Smith in? He's on FaceTime.
This is the problem when you don't come into the studio, Iain.
Well, that wasn't his fault. I went to the wrong place.
I know.
That was actually our fault, so we apologise.
We hold up our hands and apologise.
He's trapped in this, what looks like a sort of hostage room. But Iain Duncan Smith, have your say, please.
OK, two things very quickly, Piers. One, on the people's vote. Honestly, this is another example of having asked them once, some people didn't like it, and they've been banging on now for months, putting lots of money into this campaign to say we have to have another vote. And it goes on and on and on. We've had a vote. It was very clear. People were told, interestingly, the mayor himself said, when you vote, if you vote to leave, that's it. It's done. There's no further questions. Now he's changed his mind. Yep. Truth is, there's no vote. So we don't have a people's vote. Nobody really wants it. But on the point about what's on the table, the reason I said earlier on that free trade is on the table, because I genuinely believe that the EU knows that they don't want us to go to WTO, and they know that they would prefer a free trade deal. So that is, I believe, where we will end up, because the Chequers thing won't fly. But the important point here, I mean, it was said earlier on that financial services aren't in this. Ridiculous. Financial services are in a whole series of free trade deals, and that's exactly the reason why the EU would like to have a free trade deal, because under Chequers, they're not in. And that would make a lot of common sense.
I want to play you both a clip. This was on the internet yesterday. It was an old clip, I think from 2015, of Nick Clegg, who is probably the most... he makes Chuka look like a lever, right? He's the most Remainer bloke you'd ever meet in your life. This is what Nick Clegg said in 2015.
There will be some voices, and I hope it won't be Nigel or Sir William, because I think this is a fate that shouldn't befall them. They're decent characters. There will be some people. There will be some people who, like those Japanese soldiers who continued fighting the last war because no one had told them it had ended in some Pacific island, who will carry on arguing and arguing and arguing.
There'll be some voices, Chuka, who'll be like, those Japanese soldiers who don't know the war's ended. He was talking about, he was presuming, like all Remainers did, that he was going to win, and that Nigel Farage would never let it go and would demand another vote and would keep coming back. What Clegg never imagined, like many things he's done in his career, is that the complete opposite would happen. And actually, it's the Remainers who are the Japanese equivalent who don't know the war's over.
Well, I don't. Funny enough, I don't agree with that, and I certainly made no presumptions about that referendum. But equally, on the other side, the Leavers were presuming there would be another result, which is why Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg and others were talking about the idea of having another referendum. But my key argument is this: look. Loads and loads of new facts have arisen on this that no one could have foreseen. Whatever side of the argument you were on...
But you're still making a presumption of financial meltdown when actually nobody knows. This is my problem with it. Everyone's guessing, right? Everyone's taking their positions and they're seizing on every bit of news that suits their agenda. But nobody actually knows.
Well, let's look at the things we do... Hang on just a minute. The things that we do know. There is a £40 billion divorce bill nobody knew about before. There is no £350 million extra per week going to the NHS. In fact, we have a massive nursing and doctor shortage, and we've got EU citizen nurses and doctors leaving our country in droves. We've lost over 10,000.
But Brexit hasn't actually happened.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the point.
And also... Exactly.
Well, because that's in the run-up.
But how much of this is being driven by fear-mongering by people like you?
But it's not...
Who say it's the end of the world, it's the end of the country.
No. Piers, let's get one thing straight. It's not because of people like me. The government's in charge of this. I'm not in government.
But you're out there every day.
And let me give you a figure.
Every day you're out there saying it's the end of this country as we know.
No.
Right? Everything's a disaster.
Show me a clip where I've said it's the end of the world.
I'll find one.
You won't. You won't. But the reality is, if you look at what it means for people, £900 a year worse off. That's what the Bank of England is saying. We are
Final
already...
point of view, if there was a second vote...
They've got every single forecast wrong. The IFS got every forecast wrong.
All the forecasts have been wrong on every
forecast.
And you said there'd be £350 million extra per week going to the NHS, so we're not going to buy your forecast.
Final question, Chuka. If there was a second vote...
And then you dismiss everything else. You can't have it always, you know?
I rather like this echo chamber we have here. Literally. Can I ask you one thing, Chuck, before we go? If there was a second vote and Remain won 51 to 49, would the Leavers then be entitled to a third vote?
Look, I don't think democracy stands...
Yes or no?
Yeah, of course they would.
OK, great.
In the end, democracy doesn't stand still. We have general elections every 5 years.
David Cameron said this referendum would be a one-off and there wouldn't be another vote.
Wrong.
Actually, it's complete nonsense, and we'll just keep having endless referendums for the rest of our natural lives.
We have endless general elections. We have endless general elections for the rest of our lives.
We had general elections every 4 or 5 years, right? And actually, what we don't know, when we vote in general elections, we do not know every detail of what's going to be happening in that government's tenure. And that's my point about this.
No, but in general elections, we get manifestos and then you can hold governments to account.
Referendums are so important and so vital. You cannot
So are general elections. Who says general elections aren't important?
No, the referendum about an issue like this, you can't... We didn't have 40 years ago since we last had the last referendum, so come on. You want to go through all of that hiatus again? Nobody wants to.
OK, no more general elections.
I'm going to do a time-out, I'm afraid. We are running late, and the one thing we know with absolute certainty is we will still be arguing about this tomorrow, and the next day, and the next week, the next month, because actually we still don't really know what the hell is going on.